Your gut will say thank you for these 5 foods. Have you ever felt as if a tiny orchestra had started playing inside your belly, drums pounding in your abdomen, violins screeching through your intestines, all triggered by something as ordinary as a sandwich or what seemed like an innocent supermarket yogurt? I certainly have. More than once, especially back when I was a rookie journalist chasing breaking stories across half the globe and surviving on whatever was within reach. Fast food, ready meals, and so-called healthy bars boasting added probiotics on the packaging, though their ingredient lists looked less like food and more like a chemistry lab inventory. Then, one day, sitting in a small village in southern Korea, where roads are narrow paths winding between rice paddies and houses are humble wooden structures with warm ondol floors, I tasted kimchi for the first time, prepared by Grandma Choi, a woman whose age she measured not in years, but in cabbage harvests. That was the 3rd harvest after the war, she said, handing me a small clay bowl filled with sour, spicy, faintly fizzing mass that sent a shiver down my spine, not just from the taste, but from a sudden realization. For the first time in a long while, I didn't just feel full, I felt alive. I had no idea then that this wasn't merely food, it was a living culture, both literally and metaphorically, because in every spoonful of kimchi, billions of microorganisms danced, not only digesting the cabbage for us, but reprogramming our immune system, teaching our brain to respond more calmly to stress, and even influencing how we sleep, think, and feel. Yes, you heard that right. What's fermenting in that jar of sauerkraut on your kitchen shelf may be more powerful than any vitamin supplement from the pharmacy. And today, I want to tell you not just about food, but about a quiet revolution happening inside us, in the gut, home to our second brain, invisible yet incredibly influential, where fermented foods serve as its loyal allies, spies, and healers. We'll journey through ancient cuisines worldwide, from the snowy plains of Mongolia, where mare's milk transforms into kumis, the drink of Genghis Khan's warriors, to the misty alleyways of Kyoto, where monks brewed sake not for intoxication, but for enlightenment via rice fermentation, and witness how the same biological magic, repeated across cultures, becomes the key to survival, health, and longevity. You'll learn why Soviet doctors in the 1940s sent children to the Caucasus not only for sunshine and clean air, but also for kefir, a live, grain-based, gently effervescent, transported in leather flasks, and why the Japanese consider miso soup not just breakfast, but a morning prayer for health. We'll discuss how sauerkraut saved sailors from scurvy, even though vitamin C, supposedly depleted by fermentation, actually increased because bacteria, like tiny alchemists, transformed simple sugars into complex vitamins, antioxidants, and enzymes our bodies cannot produce on their own. Most importantly, we'll understand why today, in the age of sterile packaging, antibiotics prescribed at the first sneeze, and relentless stress, these ancient foods are returning, not as a passing trend, but as a necessity, a lifeline for an immune system increasingly prone to confusing friend and foe and attacking its own body. I'll tell you not only about microbiota and short-chain fatty acids, but also about how in a Tibetan monastery, I once saw an elder, rumored to be over 100 years old, drinking a cup of tea with kombucha every morning, treasuring the SCOBY like a relic, passing it on to disciples only after 10 years of testing, because as he put it, the SCOBY chooses the person, not the person the SCOBY. We'll examine why kombucha, now sold in glass bottles for 20 euros, was originally called tea kwas and consumed not for its buzz, but for survival in times when well water was riskier than wine. We'll recall how during the siege of Leningrad, fermented vegetables were among the few sources of vitamins, and how scientists safeguarding the All-Union Institute of Plant Industry's collection hid not only seeds, but also starter cultures, because they understood, without fermentation cultures, there is no future. I'll share my own mistakes, like the time I tried making kimchi from an online recipe, forgot the salt, and 3 days later my refrigerator became the scene of a biological disaster, an exploded jar and a smell so intense my neighbors called the health inspector, and explain how to avoid such mishaps while preserving safety, flavor, and benefit. We'll talk about why not all fermented foods are equally beneficial, why pasteurized store-bought kefir is almost the same as milk with yeast, whereas real live kefir should fizz slightly, separate into whey, and even change flavor depending on the weather outside, because bacteria, like us, sense atmospheric pressure. You'll discover how in Buryatia they make ayran, not just a drink, but a ritual, whipped in a special wooden vessel tapped rhythmically with a stick, believed to synchronize the drinker's heartbeat with the rhythm of nature. We'll peek into modern laboratories where scientists use DNA sequencing to decode which specific lactobacillus strains in sauerkraut help with anxiety and which alleviate inflammatory bowel conditions, and how it turned out that the starter used by a 60-year-old grandmother in Transylvania contains bacterial strains absent from any commercial probiotic. I'll recount meeting a woman in an Altai village who each autumn gathered not only mushrooms and berries, but also wild herbs, thyme, oregano, St. John's wort, for her ferments, explaining that each herb not only adds flavor, but also opens doors for specific bacteria, like a key in a lock. We'll grasp why fermentation is not mere preservation, but transformation, where coarse fiber becomes easily digestible, where phytic acid, blocking mineral absorption, breaks down so iron from lentils becomes bioavailable, where toxic saponins in soy are neutralized, and miso shifts from potentially harmful to healing. And yes, we'll touch on a notion many find almost heretical, that harmful bacteria are a myth, and the real issue isn't the presence of pathogens, but the absence of good neighbors to keep them in check, like a microscopic police force. You'll learn how in 2015, a Norwegian nursing home launched an experiment. One group received standard meals, the other 3 fermented foods daily: kefir, fermented beetroot, and sourdough bread. And after 6 months, the second group showed a 40% drop in inflammatory markers, improved cognitive function, and even less pungent body odor, because toxins began exiting via liver and gut, the way nature intended. I'll share the story of a friend who developed irritable bowel syndrome after a course of antibiotics, with no doctor able to help, until she traveled to Georgia and spent 3 weeks drinking matsun, a thick, slightly sour yogurt made from sheep's milk, traditionally served with garlic and herbs, and returned home with regular digestion, vanished rashes, and skin so renewed it resembled the result of 10 professional peels. We'll discuss how fermented foods influence hormonal balance, how kefir lowers cortisol, while sauerkraut boosts serotonin, not in the brain, but in the gut, where 95% of this happiness hormone resides. And yes, I'll explain why in Japan, babies receive not vitamin D from birth, but amazake, a sweet, warm, non-alcoholic fermented rice drink, gently preparing their gut for adult food, like a first step into the vast microbial world. We'll go over how to ferment safely, why rock salt, not iodized, is essential. Iodine kills beneficial bacteria, why a weight is needed during sauerkraut preparation to expel oxygen and create an anaerobic environment where lactobacilli thrive, not mold, and why never to seal the jar airtight during the first days of fermentation, or gas pressure may turn your kitchen into a disaster zone. I'll recall watching in the Medinas of Fez, Morocco, an old man seated by his shop door, tending clay pots of Laban, a sour milk drink fermenting in the sun, turning each pot 15 degrees every 2 hours to ensure even temperature, saying, "Fermentation is like raising a child. You must be firm yet fair, patient yet vigilant." We'll discuss modern studies where volunteers were split into 2 groups. One ate a standard Western diet, the other the same diet plus 100 grams of sauerkraut daily. and after 4 weeks, the second group's microbiome diversity increased by 23%, despite no other dietary changes. You'll learn how in Ethiopia they make injera, a sour flatbread from teff starter that serves simultaneously as food, plate, and utensil, with starters passed down through generations, sometimes over a century, and how scientists identified unique Lactobacillus fermentum strains in it that suppress Helicobacter pylori, the bacterium behind ulcers and stomach cancer. I'll tell you about tasting chicha in Peru, a corn drink traditionally chewed by women before fermentation, because salivary enzymes begin starch breakdown even before yeasts kick in, and how this seemingly primitive method proved brilliant. Salivary amylase converts polysaccharides into simple sugars, easily transformed by microbes into lactic acid and ethanol, and how modern biotech now replicates the process, minus the chewing, by simply adding enzymes. We'll understand why traditional societies had no concept of diet, because food itself was medicine, and fermentation its pharmacy. Sauerkraut for colds, Kefir for diarrhea, miso for fatigue, kimchi for stagnation, kombucha for detox. And how today, having forgotten to listen to our bodies, we read labels and count calories instead, overlooking that the main question isn't how much, but how was it prepared? All share a simple yet powerful observation. In the world's so-called blue zones, Okinawa, Sardinia, Nicoya, Ikaria, and Loma Linda, where people routinely live past 100, live fermented foods, often homemade, sugar-free, and unpasteurized, are always part of the diet. This is no coincidence. It's a law. We'll delve into history. In 1907, Nobel laureate Elie Mechnikov first linked the longevity of Bulgarian peasants to fermented dairy, dubbing Lactobacillus bulgaricus the immortality bacterium. And though later research revealed it wasn't a single strain, but an entire ecosystem, his intuition held. Gut microbiota are central regulators of aging. I'll recount how in 2023, a study in Cell showed fecal transplants from young to old mice extended lifespan by 15%, and that the key component of the young microbiome was bacteria producing butyrate, a short-chain fatty acid generated when lactobacilli ferment fiber. Butyrate isn't just fuel for gut cells, it's a signal telling the immune system, relax, all's well, no need to attack pollen or gluten. We'll explore how sauerkraut isn't just cabbage in brine, but a complex bioreactor. First, Leukonostoc launches a vigorous, noisy phase, releasing CO2 and lowering pH. Then, as acidity rises, Lactobacillus plantarum and Lactobacillus brevis take over, quietly but powerfully, producing not just acid, but also antibiotics, bacteriocins that kill pathogens without harming the host, and how this process cannot be rushed. Haste destroys taste, aroma, and crucially, benefit. As the Germans say, good sauerkraut is salted 3 times, with salt, patience, and love. I'll remember how in Armenia's Gegard Monastery, I watched monks prepare tan, a fermented milk drink mixed with water and herbs, and how one told me, milk is the cow's gift, but tan is the bacteria's. The cow provides raw material, the bacteria provide wisdom. Later, I learned that the Tanakh, ancient Hebrew scripture, mentions soured milk eaten by prophets, and perhaps it was precisely such fermented foods that granted them the mental clarity and spiritual strength we can now only dream of. We'll examine why modern children fall ill so often, not because viruses have multiplied, but because their microbiomes are disrupted from birth by C-sections, antibiotics, sterile food, and lack of contact with soil and animals, all depriving them of the first immunology lesson once delivered by maternal microbes during birth and breastfeeding, later supplemented by fermented foods. And how today, Scandinavian pediatricians recommend introducing homemade low-acidity kefir at 8 months, not commercial varieties, to avoid irritating delicate stomachs. I'll describe how, in an Israeli clinic, autoimmune patients receive not only medication, but also a 4-fermented vegetable diet: cabbage, carrots, beets, cucumbers, and how within 3 months, 46% achieved remission without changing drug therapy. We'll see that fermentation isn't a step backward, but forward, into a future where food is information we send our bodies, and each spoonful of kimchi is a dialogue with billions of microscopic allies, awaiting not disinfection, but trust. As a Stanford microbiologist once told me, you're not the owner of your body, you're an ecosystem. Your job isn't to destroy, but to manage, not to control, but to collaborate. And today, I invite you to begin this dialogue, not with pills or supplements, but with a simple glass jar, salt, and cabbage. Because health isn't bought at the pharmacy, it's grown in soil, in barrels, in the gut. And like a starter culture, it's passed down not through DNA, but through recipes, not through blood, but through taste. So tomorrow, opening your fridge, ask not what shall I eat, but who's eating with me. And perhaps this tiny shift in thinking will spark a profound transformation in your body. Because revolution doesn't start on barricades, it starts in the kitchen. And its leading characters are invisible, yet invincible. They're already waiting for you. All you need to do is open the jar.